Welcome to episode 19 of Nectar Knitty Chats. It has been a really long time. I filmed, before I get to that, this is my corner of YouTube where I document my projects and talk about all my different yarn and sweater adventures. Thank you so much for being here. If you're returning, wow, welcome back. If you're new, thank you so much for tuning in. There's so many channels that you can watch, and so I appreciate you spending a little bit of time with me. And I apologize for being gone for so long. Shortly after my last video, I got COVID and it really took me out. I briefly went to Maryland Sheep and Wool, which I do a lot. I want to do a recap for. That was back in May, which feels wild. And I have all the footage and everything like that. So I definitely want to do an episode dedicated to that. But I got sick, and then it was summer, and our place in the summer is very hot and humid. And so then my motivation to knit, I still knit, it's just a much lower, and my motivation to film was even lower. And part of that is also because we just always have to have the air conditioning running, and it is super loud. The corner I'm in right now where the camera is where our portable air conditioning lives. So that all being said, I'm back. I had been thinking about filming again. My knitting mojo is back in full swing. So I have a lot to talk about, and I am gonna try and go through really quick the things that I have worked on since my last video. I have some notes because, as you can see, these are all things I've finished since I last filmed. So I will start with the one I'm wearing. So I am wearing the Dartmoor by Caidree. This is a oversized drop shoulder, super cozy, bulky weight sweater, double folded neck. I made it in Knitting for Olive, double soft merino, and brushed alpaca silk. I talked about this a lot in my last video, so I won't go too far into it. But that being said, it is like one of my favorite sweaters. So you can see it's got like nice drape, beautiful detailing on the back. I love it. So definitely predict myself knitting one of these again. And now I'm just gonna do a big old finished object roundup. Some of them I have with me, some of them I don't. And then at the end, I will update you guys a little bit on why I don't have all of them with me. So the other project I was finishing up on my last video was my Moonset tee by Ozetta. I finished it. I lengthened it a little bit, fixed up the sleeves, and then I dyed it. I have a picture I will pop up here. And it is a beautiful wine red color now. Right now, I do not have it with me, which I will explain later. I'm really happy with it. I think it's still a little bit too short, so I might try to block some length into it if I can. It's not a super wash, so I don't know how much spring back it'll have, but it's a linen wool blend from Battenkill fibers that I got from Maryland Sheep and Wool the first time I ever went. So love that pattern. I would really like to make it again, but with a yarn that has a little bit more drape, where the yarn I use definitely, I think, just is a little too tight of a gauge for the pattern. And lessons learned, always learning more about my knitting. So that's my Moonset. Next, I made a summer Ranunculus. I also do not have this one because I gifted it, but I will post a picture. It was made with O-Wool's Balance, which is also discontinued. It's a cotton wool blend. I gifted it to a family friend, and I still have not made myself a ranunculus. If you do not know, the ranunculus is a very popular pattern by Midori Hirose knits, and it is great, and it does not take that much yarn, which I think is one of the biggest appeals of it. I have yarn set aside, also a well balance for myself to make that sweater in a kind of wine red pinky color. So I think that might be a project for myself next summer. It's a great gift knit because it's beautiful, the fit is really lovely, and it knits up pretty quick. So definitely recommend. Next is a pattern I have on me. I signed up for a test knit with, and I apologize, I have some stuff bagged up here. I made the the Queen's Cami, and this was by ToriKnitsNYC, I believe. I will link everything below. So it is a tank with a knitted hem, a folded knitted hem, which is beautiful. And it's kind of a peplum top. I used Sewrella's silk sock in the color white Epcot. It is beautiful. This is one of my favorite yarns that I've ever worked with. I made my farfa top with it. And originally this yarn was designated for a farfa top, but then I loved this tank pattern. It's bottom up construction. It's really nice and flowy. I am overall very happy with how it came out. The V-neck it's a higher V, so it's definitely work appropriate. The only thing is it is bottom up. I definitely should have knit more length into it. I think the pattern, I have this problem with bottom up knits where I can't ever really tell how long it's actually gonna be. And so I have more of this yarn for sure. And I plan to, at some point, knit some extra length. So I've seen people who will cut, they will cut the yarn and just knit extra length into the bottom. And so I think I will do that and just add a couple inches, and then it'll be perfect. And I have a lot of the yarn left over, so I don't anticipate that being a problem at all. But yes, that is the Queen's Cami by ToriKnitsNYC. She also has a couple sweater patterns. There's one sweater pattern of hers that I love that is a raglan with textured sleeves, and it's like a knit pearl texture. I don't know it off the top of my head, but I'll mention it below. That I want to say it's like the Brooklyn raglan or something like that, which I might only be thinking because maybe it's the Brookline. Probably because of New York. I'm not sure. I can't remember that off the top of my head, but I definitely would love to try her patterns again. The testing experience was super smooth and she was really easy to work with, so I would definitely test for her again. Next, I knit another gift. This was a surprise for my maid of honor. In my last video, I talked about how Steve and I got engaged in the spring, and so as a gift for my maid of honor, I knit her a sweater. So I will post a picture here. I knit the home sweater V-neck by Caidree. This is the second time I've knit it. I have yarn for myself for a sweater in this pattern as well. And I picked like a beautiful, well, she picked a couple different colors, but she picked like a hunter green color. And it is, again, great pattern. Definitely want to make it again. Kind of like the Dartmoor. It's cozy, it's oversized. I made it in drops air, so it's just like this really lovely, fluffy, light fabric and affordable. Drop shoulder as well, so just a really classic pattern. I have a really, really lovely gray speckled yarn that I would love. That is definitely one I'm really considering as one of my next projects. Right now, I'm a little bit in the weeds with some test knits, but I'm excited about that one. So that was the home sweater V-neck. I knit that sometime this summer. And then the next big project I took on, I am gonna pause here because it's in a bag, so it's gonna make lots of crinkly noises, so give me a second. Okay, I'm back. So the next big project I knit was a sweater. You might recognize this, the zipper sweater man. It's a little wrinkly because it's been folded up. the zipper sweater man for Steve. I love this color. I'm definitely gonna steal this. This is a Petite knit pattern. I don't feel like it really needs an introduction. I knit one for my dad for Christmas and Steve really liked it. And I told him once we were engaged, I would knit him a sweater. And so I stayed true to my word. And I ordered, this is Knit Picks Wool the Andes Bulky. I do not know the color off the top of my head, but I will put it in the description below. And it came out really great. I'm not super happy with my sewing job, you can see, but otherwise very, very happy with it. Steve loves it. I will put in some pictures of it and I have some pictures of Steve wearing it. I am so pleased with it. It has been he's worn it a few times since then, and it's like a really warm, really, really thick, and so it's a good outer layer. It's getting a little cooler here, so it has been a really good companion for when we go on our walks around our neighborhood. Steve is really happy with it. I think the color is really lovely, and I definitely want to steal it. It is very woolly wool, but Steve seems to not have any trouble tolerating it. So I am so happy with that. Hold on 1 minute. I'm gonna bag this back up because Arya is sniffing around the plastic bag I just had it in, and if I don't take care of that now, she's gonna chew it up. So give me a second. I knit that with the intention of us wearing it in our engagement photos, which we did. I will put some pictures of those in the video towards the end here because I'm wearing another finished object that I made for myself. So I am just really, really delighted. I think they looked so beautiful together, and it just felt really special to wear something knitted that I made for us, which was really cool. And the pictures are super fall, which is our favorite time of year. So that worked out really well. Wow, that is a lot of stuff, and I still have more to go. The next project I knit was the Ellie shirt, a test knit for Russ Knitwear. I knit it in Knitting for Olive in dark sea green and Knitting for Olive cotton merino. This was originally intended for another project that is also Broken Rib, but then I saw the Ellie shirt and I applied for the test knit. And anytime Simone does a pattern or a test I've knitted that I've participated in, the fit is just perfect for me. So whatever she is doing is really working for my tension and my style. So I decided to go for it. It was so much work, so much work. It's fingering weight, broken rib, highly textured, really lots of beautiful details, I-cords and increases and decreases to make a beautiful project. I do not have it with me right now, but I will post a picture here of what it looks like on, and I just love the fit. I've worn it to work. I really just think it's wonderful. So that was something I knit this summer and has gotten a good bit of wear, and I really like the cotton merino. The fabric is really nice and it works out well. I try not to wear it when it's like super hot, but I did wear it a couple times when it was, you know, summer, and it worked out really well. So definitely a big fan of the Ellie shirt. And I'm actually doing another test for her right now that I can't talk a ton about, but I will address that in my whips. Next, another big project that I have to get out of bag, so I'm gonna do that now. Okay. This was another project I knit for our engagement photos. This was one of my aspirations this year, was to knit a big cabled sweater. I knit the Eclain Raglan by Laura Penrose. I'd been wanting to try one of her patterns for a long time. She's really well known for the souffle tee. She recently released the Sweet Shop blanket, which is definitely on my list. I'm not a blanket person, but I love garter and short rows, which is the main things that you do for that project. But back to the Eclain Raglan. I used Cascade 220 in the color Natural and made this beautiful sweater. I omitted the baubles. I have pictures of me wearing it that I will pop in here. I am so delighted. The Cascade 220, it's non-superwash, but it is next to skin soft for me. I can wear it. There's no itch factor for me, but it still has like great elasticity and good stitch definition. I mean, the cables just came out really beautiful. I'm so delighted with how, and it blocks out really nicely. It's super cozy, so the length is like almost tunic length, which I really, really like. I wore this for engagement photos with jeans and boots, and I thought it was just so wonderful. So I highly recommend this pattern. She's super size inclusive as well, and I found the cabling to be really, really, really enjoyable. I actually learned how to cable without a cable needle, and that was so helpful because with the cable needle, it just adds a lot of time for me, but these ones I was able to do, and this wool is nice and kind of sticky. So even when you like pulled the stitches off your needles, they didn't like immediately drop or anything like that. Where the project I'm working on right now, I'm doing cables and it's a lot more slippery because I'm using a superwash sock yarn. And so I have to be much more careful, where for these, it's not a problem at all. I really, really love the end result. I definitely predict this getting a ton of wear, and it actually knit up pretty fast considering, you know, it's got a funnel neck and it's tunic length and it's split hem, and the sleeves I knit, you know, a little longer than I normally do. So it's a lot of knitting, but I'm super pleased with the result, and it did knit up faster than I was expecting. I was getting a little worried I wouldn't have it done in time for engagement photos, but then I think I ended up having it done a whole 2 weeks in advance, including blocked ends woven. Although I don't actually think I wove in all the ends. So I really need to do that because I have worn it quite a bit. But I knit in, and I wove in all the important ones, like the sleeves and the neck and all that good stuff. So I also should probably have split spliced for these. I did split splice for another project I'll show you, but I didn't for this, which I'm now learning split splicing is great, so I should do it more often. All right, back in the bag it goes. Well, that brings us back all the way up to October. So just a few weeks ago that I finished that project. And after that, I really wanted to cast on something a little bit smaller and some yarn that I had for a long time. Actually, it's yarn that I bought the first time I went to Maryland Sheep and Wool, and I got out from Stash this beautiful Jill Draper makes yarn in it was called Ansel is the type of yarn. The colorway they don't have anymore, and I can't remember it off the top of my head. I will include it in the description. And it is like an alpaca lace weight yarn. One skein was over 800 yards, I believe. And then I got a fingering weight yarn of theirs to hold with it. I can't remember off the top of my head, but again, I will put the description in the box. And it created I had bought it originally with the intention of knitting the cold shoulder crop, which I'm now picking at because it's picked up some fuzzies. So this is the cold shoulder crop. I mean, the colors were slightly different, which created this really beautiful marling. and texture. So you can see it has a lace sleeve, double rib collar, and then I couldn't get over doing cables. I'm in it my cable era, and this beautiful cable detail. So this one I am really, really pleased with. I knit it a little bit longer than to pattern because it was really cropped and I had a lot of yarn left over. I still have a lot of the fingering weight yarn left over. The alpaca yarn had some problems. I emailed the distributor. It was like really, 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 really tangled. I put it on my Swift, I would spool it, and then it was like the yarn kind of like went back and forth, and so there was a lot of overlap, where normally when you put it on your Swift, it kind of goes in a continuous circle. So I ended up having to cut it several times, and so a lot of the yarn was completely not usable. But that being said, the skein was so big that I ended up just being able to use the more usable parts of it. And then I had to toss a bunch of it because I was literally getting just a couple yards basically in a tiny little ball. And in the end, it probably took me 2 hours to wind what I could. In the end, the result, this color, I think is 100% worth it. And then also I reached out to Jill Draper and they were so kind. I told them my issue. They sent me a whole new skein of the alpaca yarn, the lace weight alpaca yarn, and this beautiful heirloom tomato color. They would have sent me this color, except for that they didn't have it because they don't do, like, their colors change constantly. And they were so sweet. They shipped it right away. And it is, like I said, this beautiful like tomato red color. Don't have it on me. I will explain at the end why I don't, but I am just really delighted with this project. It was like kind of, the yarn kind of felt like almost like I could really feel the oil from the sheep, I guess, or maybe the spinning oil on it. So when I blocked this, it bloomed so beautifully and it really softened up, and I just think it's really lovely. So the actual pattern, the cold shoulder crop, I liked it. It was, honestly, you could definitely knit it in fingering weight yarn. I could have just done the fingering weight yarn that I had. Instead, I knit down a size and knit at the gauge, because my gauge is pretty tight with this yarn, so I really, really think I could have gotten away with not holding it with the alpaca, but I really loved the color result, and so I just kind of did a little bit of stitch math and decided to knit a size down, and it fits perfectly. I'm super happy with the result. The only thing I don't love about this pattern is there are no short rows, and so it does kind of feel a little funny on my neck. On the length on my body, I think because my bust I don't want to say so large, but because of my bust, the length actually sits okay on me. So even though typically in the back you want it to be a little bit longer and the short rows help with that, here it fits fine. It's up on my neck that it feels a little tight. So, and unfortunately, I did not feel confident in my knitting in this textured yoke to insert my own short rows, so I didn't. But that's probably something I just need to teach myself. Almost all of the projects I have knit have short rows since the very first sweater I ever knit. So I feel like it, for me on my neck, it does make a difference, especially with this being a mock neck. It's like right up here. But that being said, I'm still overall very pleased with it. I would knit it again, but I think I would try and figure out the neck situation. I would figure out how to do short rows. I've seen people incorporate short rows into the ribbing, which I think would work well here, because otherwise you would have to incorporate short rows into this textured yoke. And to be honest, I think that would make my brain explode. So that's, oh, I also made a mistake on the sleeve here. But to be honest, because there's no short rows, you can wear it either way. So then I just wear it the way that's not messed up. So it works out okay. Then my last few things that I knit, one of them I have with me, so I'm gonna grab that. Okay, I have the Sille Slipover. It's a tiny little slipover. How cute is that? Look at that stitch. So this is a little sweater vest that I made for my friend's child's, also my maid of honor's nephew. This yarn actually really closely matches the yarn that I used for my maid of honor's sweaters, so they'll kind of have a little matching thing. This is Woolies by LionBrand. I picked this because it is machine washable. It still, I think, looks really nice and woolly, and the stitch definition here for this pattern was perfect. Gauge was good, and the color variation for this yarn is really nice. There's like little flecks of yellow. It's like a good, I don't know if it's gonna come up, but it's a good little heathered yarn. And I was able to just pop it right in the washer dryer, and it came out really soft. And so I think this will be a perfect little sweater for him. He is about to turn 1, so I made the larger size, the size 1 to 2, because I figure that will get him through the winter, and then maybe next year it'll be like a little cropped sweater vest. I don't know. I hope they like it. They don't know about it yet. It's a complete surprise, but I thought it was a fun, quick pattern. It's by Petite Knit, and yeah, I think overall it was a good, I really have had good experiences knitting her baby patterns. She has a lot because she has a billion children. I don't know if I've knit any of her patterns for myself, but when I'm looking for baby patterns, that has been a good go-to. So that's the Sille Slipover by Petite Knit. I'm gonna pop this one back away. I also then knit 2 baby Sophisticates. I do not have either of them because I gifted them, but it is a very, very cute stockinette cardigan with a shawl collar that I knit in the extra skeins I had left over from my dad's zipper sweater man and Steve's zipper sweater man. One I gifted to my nephew, and the other I am gifting to a friend who has a baby. So those, I will pop pictures in here. They are super cute. The fastest sweater I've ever knit in my life. It's a very, very no fuss, which I think for a baby sweater is great. The shawl collar calls for wrap and turn short rows, which I hate. I've done them before. One of my first projects ever, I actually used wrap and turn, and it was horrible, and I cried. And I now use German short rows, which I find much, much more intuitive. So, but they are worked kind of backwards from each other. So I had to do a little bit of, I don't know, knitter math to figure that out. But I basically, with the collar, it's in garter, so it's very, very cute. And you knit a couple of rows to just establish the collar. And then I place stitch markers where you're supposed to start the wrap and turn, but instead I placed those as where I would end my German short rows. Aria, you do not need to be playing in the box right now. She has a little cardboard box that Steve put here. He calls it Box City. It drives me nuts because I don't want a cardboard box just living in our living room. We have a 1-bedroom apartment. There's only so much room, but it's hard because she loves it. Hey, stop it. So then she just messes around in there constantly. Okay. I don't know if you just heard my tummy. So what a whirlwind. That's all the projects that I've worked on recently. I have 2 works in progress currently. One is a secret test knit for Rust Knitwear. So all I'm going to show you is the yarn I'm using. It's Cascade Heritage Sock. It is in this really beautiful light blue color, which is color number 5781. And I just love this baby blue. I love blue. It's one of my favorite colors. And this is a secret test knit. I have a good bit of work done on it. It is a lot of work, a lot of work, but I am really enjoying it. I believe the information about the pattern will be released in December, so I can talk more about it after that. But as of right now, I'm working with Cascade Heritage Sock. I've worked with this yarn many times before. Cascade is my go-to good quality yarn at an affordable price point. I use Cascade 220 a lot. I've used Cascade Heritage Sock several times. I'm open to trying more of their yarns. I want to try their Cascade Wave, which is a barber pulling color changing yarn. I'm looking into that as a possible option to make a sweater for Steve. Don't tell him. But yeah, I think this color is beautiful. The yarn is really soft. It's a superwash yarn. It's 75% superwash merino wool, 25% nylon, pretty typical sock yarn. But the drape will be beautiful. The stitch definition is lovely. So I'm really happy with this. And this pattern calls for a lot of yarn. So frankly, I couldn't afford to really pick anything that was much more pricey than this, just because, yeah, I'm on a budget, you know, saving for a wedding, trying to reduce my yarn intake for many reasons, but this one was a good one. And then I applied for these tests. Basically, I applied for 2 tests and they basically came through on the same day. I wasn't expecting to get both of them, but I did. That being said, both the deadlines are pretty generous and neither require me to finish the object before the deadline. So that is really great. And the other test I'm doing is for Sophie of the Knit Pearl Girl. It is the Saltburn sweater. So I'm gonna pop a picture of her version here. And then I'm gonna show you my version, which actually, hold on, let me grab my swatch. Okay, so I have my swatch. It is in Cascade 220. You've heard it here before. I don't know. Again, budget friendly, next to skin soft for me, and really great stitch definition, great for cables, great for color work. So this is the Saltburn sweater. Let me make sure I'm holding this right. So this is my swatch. I swatched in the round, which I very rarely do, but it is an absolute necessity for color work. This year I set an aspiration to knit a color work yoke. I actually was inspired by the Saltburn sweater, so when I saw that it was up for testing, I applied immediately. Did not think I would get it. Sophie has become incredibly popular designer, which I am so happy for her. It does mean that testing for her is super competitive, and I know I could always knit the patterns outside the testing window, but I personally really enjoy testing. I like the community. I kind of like the external deadline, and it really helps me kind of focus on one project at a time. Although right now I'm working on 2 significant projects. And I picked this really lovely dark green color. Let me actually get the yarn so I can tell you the color. This is color 9674. It is this beautiful dark green. I think that's coming up pretty well. It's very bright right here. And then just natural. It's actually a leftover ball from my Eclair sweater, and I think I will use pretty much the entirety of it for this project, and I'm delighted because then I won't have as many scraps left over. I love the color work motif. I will fully admit I'm not very good at color work, but I am really pleased with this. I feel like it blocked out really well. I'm certain it's not perfect, but for me, for this being my first color work yoke, I am really, really proud of myself. Here's my float side. I feel like that looks pretty good. If you don't think so, don't let me know, because I am gonna go on pretending like this is perfect. I know it's not perfect, but I am really, really happy with it, and I'm really happy with the color choice. I think it will be festive for the holiday season. I will definitely have this done by Christmas, and it's so cute. This is a big swatch because I did the whole motif and the increases, so you can see it's almost, what, a quarter of the yoke that I did for the swatch. I think this will knit up really quickly, especially compared to my other test knit, which is in sock weight. Well, fingering weight, sock weight, same difference. But yes, and I have cast on just a little bit, literally just a little bit. I've joined the contrast color, and that's pretty much it so far. It will have a double folded collar, which is my new favorite thing. And I think it's gonna come out really well. The deadline is super, super generous. I think I have until December 20th, and there's no expectation to complete the entire sweater. So that is really great, which is why my other test knit has taken priority over this one. I apologize for the sniffles. I am getting over a cold, but I really was feeling motivated to video this today, and so I just followed that inspiration. But that, you might notice my nose is a little redder than usual. I'm sounding a little bit stuffy, but at the same time, I don't know the next time I'll be able to film because I have a busy couple weeks coming up. Okay, so that brings me up to date with my knitting. I have one other little project I'll be doing probably soon, maybe this weekend. And then other than that, that's my knitting life. Outside of that, also related to my knitting life, last weekend, Steve and I discovered a huge moth issue, and it had caused some damage on some of my yarn. So I had to throw out a lot, and then anything that I felt was remotely salvageable, I bagged up and took to my parents' house, who have a large chest freezer. And so my parents' chest freezer has pretty much my entire yarn collection in it. We have a few things in our freezer here. We have a smaller than usual fridge, so it really can only hold so much, but that is where my Moonset tee is. That is where my Ellie tee is. So they seemed fine, but just to be safe, I wanted to freeze them, because freezing, you have a couple options I found out. The internet can tell you lots about moth damage, but basically in terms of eradicating them from wool, you can warm your sweaters in an oven, which I was definitely not going to do because we have a gas stove and they probably would have caught on fire, which would have been a whole other problem. Say goodbye to all of my belongings. Or you can freeze them. The timeline changes. Some say 3 weeks, some say 3 months, some say 3 days. At this point, I'm basically gonna freeze everything as long as I'm not using it. And then I think if I hit the 3-month mark, I will pull everything out, which I will. There's some yarn that I'm not gonna touch within the next 3 months because I have so much yarn. But as a result, I did have to discard a lot. Mostly the things that were negatively impacted were interestingly, my oddballs, probably because they've been in my stash longer. It's not really clear the timeline of when this happened. We really don't see moths in our place, so it's definitely moth damage, but we're not really sure when it happened. So that is kind of tough. That being said, last weekend was a lot of cleaning, vacuuming, wiping things down, bagging them. And so as a result, a lot of my sweaters are living in bags. I got like big, thick plastic bags with silica, I got those silica packets that are in there to help with moisture. And that is, I think, how I'm going to just have to store things from now on. It's certainly not as aesthetically pleasing, but Steve and I do not have the space right now to get a cedar chest. That is, as soon as we buy a house, whenever that will be, I think my first Facebook Marketplace find is going to be a cedar chest. And my dad has already told me that he will build me a cedar closet or line a closet with cedar for the intention of safely storing my things, which I am very, very fortunate to have a family that really supports my love of fiber, because my parents have generously given up pretty much their entire freezer to my yarn stash, and it is a big freezer. So I just really don't think my mom was like, I cleared a shelf for you. And I was like, I don't think you know how much yarn I have. It's a lot. It doesn't look like a lot when it's in those 9 cube storage things, but it is, and it takes up a lot of space. It's fluffy. So that happened. It's fine. None of the sweaters, garments, they're in a separate room, so they did not seem even a little bit damaged. But I just want to be safe, and so we're definitely keeping an eye on things. I've hung up lavender satchels. I ordered cedar blocks, so lots and lots and lots of preventative measures. All that to say, just keep an eye out on your stuff. Get a cedar chest, lavender. Just look at your stuff often to check, because yeah, I did lose a couple hats because they were out in our living area, which seems to be the area that was most impacted. And it was kind of a bummer because some of them were projects that I had. One of them was one of Steve's hats that I knit early on in my knitting journey, and we like picked out the yarn together. So I think that part is kind of hard. And a couple gift skeins that I had received that I really, really loved and just hadn't used yet because I wasn't sure. I think I have a hard time deciding how to use oddball skeins. There's one that was gifted by my friend's mother that was so beautiful. It was called Lorna's Lace, and it was this lace weight, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful yarn that I was thinking about holding with another yarn to make a shawl or a ranunculus as a gift, and I lost it, and I'm pretty sure it was a one-of-a-kind skein. I did take a picture of it to see if I could find it anywhere. But that being said, it's just stuff. Like, it's okay. As you guys know, there's lots of yarn out there that I will acquire, and it's okay. And I've made peace with it. It was definitely annoying, and I wish I knew what I knew now, but I live in an old apartment in an old building, and it's just, I think a little moth got in and it became a much bigger problem than I would have ever expected. I'm trying to think of other life things. I think that's pretty much it for now. So as of right now, the only yarn I have in my apartment is for these suit tests, which I am constantly like keeping out in the sun because moths like really don't like the sun, and constantly looking at, and they're new skeins that I just brought into my house. So they're, you know, very, very, very unlikely to have been impacted, but now we know. Thank you so much for sticking with me. I know it has been a long time, but I'm hoping I might get back to filming these more regularly. I definitely want to do a Maryland sheep and wool recap. And I know recently there was a lot of info out there about Rhinebeck, more specifically Wool and Folk. I did not go, but I would love to highlight Maryland Sheep and Wool, which I think is a wonderful wool festival that is completely underrated on the East Coast. And I am very fortunate that is only about 25 minutes from my house. And I took a lot of footage this year, and there's lots of great fiber, lots of sheep. For the spinner folks out there, lots of great wool, a great wool barn, I think. I don't know anything about buying raw wool, so I guess I couldn't really speak to it, but there's definitely a lot of it, so I can speak to that part at least. And I think it just deserves some love. So happy fall, happy knitting season. Thank you for joining me, and I hope, oh, sorry, I will pop in at the end here me and Steve's engagement photos because we wore our sweaters and then we changed outfits and I wore my first cardigan, which ended up being beautiful. So that is how I'm going to close out this episode, is with some of our beautiful engagement photos. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great one. Bye.